Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Stand Up Taller podcast with your hosts, Al Martin and Neil Berliner.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Neil Berliner with you. Al Martin's off today. How do you get a day off actually? Because we do this podcast, we do 45 minutes in a week. I guess he probably knows somebody in some high places. I don't know. Anyway, I'll do the show. I'll fly alone here. If I get a panic attack or have an ectopic pregnancy or something during the show, I have Jason Scoop and Joseph Katz Wings, and we have a very interesting guest, unique career. You know, you can say that about people. Oh, he's so unique, interesting, but this guy really is. He has a very unique career. We'll get to him in a minute. I guess to open the show, I'll talk about me, one of my favorite people. So I got this joke book that just got onto Amazon a week or two ago, and it actually hit #1 for new joke book releases on Amazon. I'll hold it up. It's called Ha Ha History. And it's a joke book that goes through time from the beginning of recorded time, historical events like in politics, science, sports, entertainment, and we make a joke about it. So it's on Amazon right now. Anyway, let's get to our guest. Friend of mine, I know him about 10 or 12 years now. His name is Kevin Bartini. Hey, Kevin, you there? There he is.
Hey, Neil, how's it going?
Hey, how's it doing, Kevin? How's it going, Kevin? So, yeah, so I introduced you as unique, and I really think you are because you have a multifaceted career. You have a comedy career, an acting career, and you have a unique prong to your comedy stand-up career. You do warm-up for many, many shows over the years. You've done a lot of warm-up stuff. And you're on a very famous show right now, which we'll get to. But my question is, what started it for you? Your creativity led you to what at the very beginning? Because I know that you have Shakespearean training as well as your comedy training. So, how did it all begin for you?
Well, I mean, I was the funny kid in school from, minute one. I was always just a funny kid. I just early on, I wanted to be stand-up probably since I was introduced to it like 6 years old. You know, growing up in the 80s, even as a 6-year-old, you couldn't escape stand-up. It was in its real heyday, its real boom. And I would see it on television all the time, and I idolized, Jerry Seinfeld, and I loved it. And I just knew that's what I wanted to do forever. And I was lucky, I was fortunate that I, at a young age, not necessarily 6, but a little further along, I understood that I was going to have to be comfortable on stage, and I didn't know at the time if I would be or if I would have stage fright or something like that. So I got into theater when I was still just young because I was, too young to do stand-up. So it was stage time. And I grew up in the Berkshires and was just a real stroke of luck that I grew up one town over from Shakespeare and Company, which is world-renowned theatrical troupe. They have their own campus in Lenox, and there's a lot of summer stock theater in the Berkshires and stuff like that. Some very famous theater, but they just do the summer and they leave. Well, Shakespeare and Company is year round, and what they do is they have this great educational program. And they actually send their directors and their actors and their professionals into the high schools during the fall for what they call their Fall Festival of Shakespeare. So I think currently in the Northeast, they're at something like 20 high schools. And so they work with the school's drama department. And instead of doing My Fair Lady or something like that in the fall, you do Shakespeare. You do Romeo and Juliet or Macbeth or, Taming of the Shrew, whatever. And so you get to learn how to do it from the actual professional Shakespearean actors and directors, and then also they would bring in other pros, so you might get a chance to learn some stagecraft and some sword fighting and things like that. And so I did that for 4 years, and throughout high school, and then I didn't really go to college. I did a very little bit of community college, but during that was doing community theater and doing whatever. And then I started comedy. My first time doing stand-up in an actual club, I was 19 years old, and that was the start of it. I just hadn't looked back. I just did some theater and then got into stand-up as soon as I could.
Right. So the theater was just a means to an end to feel comfortable to be able to do comedy, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. It was. That's a perfect term for it, a means to an end. And I enjoyed it. And I learned a whole bunch. And then I didn't really think about it again for a good long time. I did my first. I've been probably doing stand-up about 10 years, maybe a little longer. I'd been doing the warm-up and whatnot, and I got back into theater kind of surreptitiously. I had my publicist, or a friend of mine who I had worked with on the George Carlin Way campaign, was repping a show that was out on tour, on a national tour. It was just a 2-person show and a play, and it was not doing well, and it was getting terrible reviews. And so they got into their holiday break and decided that they were going to have to make some changes. So they fired the guy, the male lead, and my friend recommended me. So I went in and I met with the director and I read a few pages, and they hired me. And next thing I know, I signed my contract, I think 2 days before Christmas. And I think I opened on January 6th or something like that. So it was a really quick turnaround. And I realized, I did it, and I did really well at it. And all of a sudden I realized, here's another aspect of showbiz, another chance to do things. And the thing I walked away from it was I really enjoyed the camaraderie of being with others and working in that way. And it made me, there's a good amount of stand-up that's, especially when you're doing the road, that's just lonely and boring. And so I was like, well, I started looking for ways of avenues where I could collaborate with people. And so then I found my way into, I think I'm sure you know Chris Griggs, just happened to have posted on Facebook one day looking for comedians for a friend of his who knew how to do Shakespeare. And I was like, all right, hi. And from there, I ended up on the ground floor of a off-Broadway theater company, and I did 4 Shakespeare plays with them. And and now we're a couple steps down the road, and now I'm starting to get some work on television and things like that. So it's you'd said earlier, that I have an interesting career or something different. And a friend of mine said something to me a little while ago that really stuck, which is he was at some sort of a corporate retreat or whatnot, and the speaker, the theme of what the guest speaker was saying really sounds like my theory, and that is, in a career in show business or whatnot, the path to the top isn't a ladder, it's a lattice. So anytime you're going you're going up, and with me, especially if I'm moving up or something and it's going well and I hit resistance, I feel like there's some sort of a glass wall or there's something. Well, instead of just waiting to go up, I'll just go to the side and I'll do something else and find my way up there. And then the clubs, maybe they don't want to book you, or the, the festivals or this or that you don't have the TV credits for. Well, okay, all right, well, I'll just pop over here and do this kind of shit. And then all of a sudden they're interested because, oh, now you've got these other interesting things going on. And that's kind of how I've been doing it for 20 years now, is this kind of lattice idea. And it's paid off because I do get to have a pretty varied career and do a lot of cool, interesting things in the process.
Yes. Well, it's interesting you talk about it as a lattice, because I often talk about this topic, because in show business, everybody, whether you like it or not, you're in a lattice. You don't say, well, my goal is in 20 years, I'm going to be the head writer for Ellen or something like that. You go with the flow. You go where the stuff is, as opposed to I guess, more traditional career. Like I'm on the side, I'm a doctor, right? So if you go to med school, you're going to wind up a doctor, right? It's going to happen if you don't flunk out, right? But in show business, you go from one thing to one thing leads to another, but you never know what the another is going to be, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right.
It happens,
It happens. And it's interesting because, like, when I was a kid and my dream was to be a stand-up comic, I wanted to be Jerry Seinfeld. I wanted to be this huge comic who does theaters, who then, has a sitcom and all that other stuff. And after a while, you start to, first of all, there's only one Jerry Seinfeld. and in the business of stand-up, at any one time, there's only one or two guys that are at the tippity top. You got your Seinfelds and your Chappelles and stuff like that. And then you got that next level right under them, which is like Bill Burr and people who can go and sell out hockey arenas and things like that. And there's only about 3 or 4 of them. And then at any one time, there's about a dozen guys who are that next level down, and maybe 50 that are consistently headlining every road comedy club and making a living out of it. And then after that, there's 20,000 people fighting for everything else. So if you go into it with your goal and your idea is I'm just going to be a stand-up and that's going to be it. Well, hey, good luck to you, but you're going to end up disappointed and you're going to end up feeling like a failure at some point. It's inevitable. My dream didn't come true the way I envisioned it. Well, no, it didn't. But look what did happen if you kind of go in other directions.
Right. Well, some really big things have happened for you, though. I mean, you've been the warm-up comedian on the biggest shows in the United States, period, right?
I've been fortunate, yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh no! Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. I did a good amount of those, and that's another lattice thing. It was an opportunity when I was a young comic coming up and starting out. I would hear about TV audience warm up, and it just seemed like such a cherry job, and a good way to get into TV and whatnot. So I kind of set my sights in a direction towards that. And I went and I did something great, and I recommend to every comic, is to go to this is dated now, but I went to the UCB and I took my 4 levels of basic improv, and I learned the Herald and all that. Now I don't do the Herald, but I did learn how to work at the top of my intelligence. I learned how to be in the moment and how to do this improvisational stuff. And as I built that skill, I got to host more and more in the city, and I was able to combine stand-up with improv, or be able to, if the stand-up wasn't working, be able to go do something else and play around. And as a result, Al Martin, he hired me on at his clubs for a good long time. I was his weekend MC. I was the house MC at all the weekend shows there. And so anytime I wasn't on the road, I always was making some money in the city doing that and learning those skills. And then what I found, just, looking back at my career during the downtime of the pandemic or whatnot was those same skills that I built in becoming a host ended up being the exact same skills that it took to be a warm-up comic. It's the same muscle, it's the same thing. And so I kind of, when I was the house MC or whatnot, I let it be known to people that I was aspiring to get into that. And then, one day, sure enough, I get a phone call, this TV show needs somebody, can you come in? Popped in, and then, it started rolling. And then all of a sudden, Jon Stewart calls, or well, his office calls, and they give me the shot at the Daily Show. And I got that job, and I worked there for about 2 seasons or so as the backup guy. And then they moved me over to the Colbert Report, and then that went off the air, and Larry Wilmore picked me up, and I did the nightly show. And, there was in about 8 years time, I ended up doing somewhere around 20 different TV shows as the warm-up guy for a minimum of 2 episodes. I don't count the ones where it was just a one-off, but the ones that called me back or whatnot. And I don't do it much anymore, but it was a great, cool experience. I'm glad I had it.
You did some game shows, warming up game shows too, right?
I did some game shows. I did a season of Match Game, which with Alec Baldwin as the host. I did a couple. There was a game show called Bunk that was on IFC, and a couple other game shows. Some of them I don't even know if they made it to air. But yeah, I did a good number of game shows. Those were fun sometimes to be the warm-up for. I always found it was easiest and preferable to be a warm-up comic on shows that I would watch if I had the chance to. I was a fan of the Daily Show back then, and Colbert and all that, and I enjoy different game shows. So it seemed easier for me if I want, because you do have to be there and watch the taping and all that. So sometimes, you get some morning talk show, the Meredith Vieira show or something like that, and it's like, this is drivel that I wouldn't like, and I'm not like the people in the audience, and that's when it feels like work.
Yeah. There's just a couple more questions about being a warm-up host. Obviously, you have to do topical material for the.
No.
Oh, really? Oh, you do? Okay, so I'm even wrong about that. So I thought my view of it was that you would talk about what's going on, and well, I guess it's not topical then. Tell me what you do as a warm-up.
Yeah, no, it's just the opposite actually. Especially with shows like the late night shows. Like if you were asked to go in and be the warm-up at the Tonight Show or over at Colbert or something like that, or back in the days of the Daily Show, I purposely never did anything topical because I didn't know what they were going to be touching on that day.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Hey, Joseph, edit out what the schmuck host just asked them. Anyway, obviously, it makes perfect sense. You want to avoid anything. You don't want to bump into what they're going to do. Obviously. So
yeah, and also, really, the only part of warm up that was kind of the same every day was you have every show. The producers will give you a little laundry list of things that you need to tell the audience. If it's a game show, it may be the rules or this or that, or just what's expected of them, and down to if there was a fire, these are where the exits are, and these are our security guys, and look at them, that kind of. So there was that element of it, and during my first like 7 or 8 minutes was always pretty much the same show to show. I had my own shtick of getting them cheering and making noise and pointing out the exits or whatever else, and ideally doing it in a way that was funny and still was able to get a laugh. And then after that, as opposed to topical material, then it was time to play. Then it was just crowd work. You just start looking for people and playing with that. No, I was otherwise. No, I would never do, and I would almost never do any of my stand-up in that. Once in a while, if I'm doing crowd work and they said something that triggered something from my act, I could bang a line out, but it's a totally different animal.
Right. So the crowd work goes hand in hand with the hosting that you do.
Right.
Yeah.
I got a question. Did you ever do anything that the higher ups were upset with? They're like, why'd you say that?
I did.
Yeah.
I got it once, and it was so benign. I was working for what was that show called? It was such a little bitch show. It was Jordan
The Chevy
Klepper's
Chase
show.
show.
No, yeah, Jordan Klepper had his own.
Oh, his Daily
Uh,
Show spinoff. Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't last. It
Mhm.
was really anyway.
Very,
And this is
yeah.
one of the things that I'm not a fan of current late night comedy, or a big feeling of comedy is these shows that are maybe more about their politics than entertaining, more
Mhm.
about teaching or lecturing, like that. I hated that movie I just saw, and I'm so disappointed with Eddie Murphy and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who I love. That
You people?
You people.
yeah, Jonah Hill. I
You
sat through
people.
that for
Yeah,
2 hours, and I just felt like I was being lectured to, the whole time, and I was just like, okay. So anyway, so that show was very much of that, and
Mhm.
uh, and very politically correct and kind of douchey. And anyway, so at one point, some woman in the audience, I mean, I was just doing crowd work going, thanks for I said, oh, crowd work, thanks for being here. And she said, thanks for having me. And I said, oh, I haven't had you yet. Ugh, and moved on. And some douche on the show, not this girl, she didn't complain, but some douche on the staff complained. So that Monday, like when I came in, I had to talk to one of the producers and be told, and I was like, that show is such a bunch of fuck. Look, I'm gonna kill my career here, but
Don't
There's
worry, nobody
nobody
that show
listens.
there who could hurt you.
ended up treating me so poorly, and it was a failing show that that ended up just I quit it in a public fashion. I mean, they were not drawing an audience. They were, some nights literally there would be 7 people in their audience in
Wow.
the house, and then they would have to have their interns come and fill in a second row. And then like at the end of the shows, like where they would kind of do a shot of the audience during the credits and pan, it would be so tight just on one, so you couldn't see it was empty. And they must have been getting some pressure from the network about that, and so they did some rearranging of deck chairs and just started messing around with the warm-up guy. And I was like, I got the fuck out of there. And then it tanked. Like it went off the air like 6 weeks later. And I was,
It's funny. Remind me, with small audiences, you remind me of a show I worked for in LA. It was modeled after the Tonight Show, and the audience was supposed to they were told to do something called double clapping. It was like, you got to clap faster to make it sound like there's more people in the audience. Apparently it worked.
funny. Oh, if you clap faster, it makes it sound like 2 people clapping instead of one.
Can you imagine? All right, I got one more question about the warm-up stuff, then we'll move on from that. It's kind of a dark side question. So
Okay.
you're on, and you may have heard this question before, but you're on these tremendous shows. Everybody, all the comedians are passing through. Is there ever a time when you go, why am I not the guy on the show tonight?
Oh my God, 1,000%. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
And that's a big part of why I ended up giving up warm-up and not really doing it. Yeah, there was that was something I felt at the nightly show by the end of its run. I mean, here was a show that had a table at for half the show, which was a panel discussion, and there was always a comic on there and whatnot. And they were doing some sketch type stuff, and here I was an actor, and sometimes they would bring in a comic who, I don't want to name names or disrespect, but was 7, 8 years less experienced than me, opens for me on the road, that kind of shit. And you just kind of scratch your head and you're like, well,
Yeah,
I don't, there's part of it was also my fault that I didn't literally just go and maybe ask straight up, hey, would you consider me? Something like that. Other guys would maybe be more more upfront about it. But for me, I always was kind of like, I don't want to rock the boat at all. I'm happy with the job that I have. That was such an easy, perfect job for me. I didn't have to be there till like 5 PM. I was done by 7 PM. It was $250 every episode. So the money was coming in nice and steady. And I didn't want to rock the boat. So I didn't want them to think I was unhappy or looking to shoot above my pay grade, but there's definitely times. And then I've done some like comedy game shows and stuff. And you see the people who are on it, and it's not like I'm expecting them to just, well, hey, everybody stop the cameras real quick. We're going to fire this guy because he's great. Another part of it is, well, why the hell am I not getting the people from 3 Arts interested in, in me or stuff like that, and who produces it? Why am I not on their radar for anything beyond that? And that is exactly why I stopped doing warm-up and stopped marketing myself as a warm-up, because I got the distinct feeling that in this industry, in stand-up, if you market yourself as the warm-up, you're basically saying I'm an opener, and they don't see you as a headliner, as a closer. So now, I haven't done it. I only do it if I get a call, which happens from time to time. Maybe another warm-up needs a fill-in for the day, or someone I worked with in the past is producing a show or doing something, and I may go in and do a few episodes, but I really don't advertise it anymore or whatnot. It's just once in a while.
Well, I was going to say that, I mean, if it's a natural feeling that if they trust you to be there every single night to do X, then why shouldn't they trust you to do Y?
You think, and warm up has been for other guys a way in and a way to stardom. For example, the comedian who used to host, now I'm blanking on his name. He ended up becoming a game show host, and it was directly just from him doing audience warm up that they saw him. Was it Family Feud?
Well, it couldn't have been. It couldn't have been Drew Carey, because he had
not Drew Carey. No. I'm blanking on his name. It doesn't matter, but it does happen from time to time, and you never know where you're going to be when somebody in the industry happens to see you and happens to be looking for something that you would fit and work right. It's
Pete Holmes is a good example of one of those guys who was doing warm up, I think, and then transitioned into a pretty successful career. I believe so. Yeah, that's what his television show about his life leads you to believe. Fuck if I know if that's true or not, but
Oh, right.
The show
Crashing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he ever really did it in real life, but it's funny. I remember when that episode aired, I got a bunch of people reaching out to me, asking me if it was authentic, how it worked, him doing warm up and all of that. And
was it?
In some fashion it was. I remember the one thing I remember, if you watch the scenes where he's doing warm up, there's a extra or whatnot who's being a cameraman, and that was the least authentic thing. Whatever the cameraman was doing was way too much work. It's like when you watch the guys who are doing the green screen and they're driving a car, and they keep jiggling to show you. It's like nobody drives like this, And so it was one of those things where the camera guy was doing all this kind of shit like he was in a submarine or something like that.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the 2 times that we worked together. You probably don't remember them, but maybe you do. So one time I had a show at the Pit called Fly on the Wall. I'm not sure if you remember this, but the concept was we had 3 or 4 comedians up front with jokes we had just written in front of an audience, and we have like a writer's room, and we punch up the jokes in front of the audience. So like the audience, they're the flies on the wall. That was when we were together. And you obviously, I can see by the look on your face that this has completely escaped your mind, and for good reason. Probably.
No. I mean, I know we worked together a few times. I remember you had were good enough to ask me to come into one of your comedy writing classes and do
Right.
some of my act. I remember doing that.
Yes.
I remember the
other
name
time.
fly on the wall. I remember the pit. I
Yeah.
just don't. I'm trying to picture who was on the show with me or whatnot. But
I
yeah,
can't remember.
mean,
I just remember it was you. I had 3 or 4 of those shows. I have about 12 comedians passing through. Todd Montesi, Emma Willman, various people, Mike Morris, some guys. But yeah, but those are 2 times we've worked together so far.
yeah.
And I wanted to mention also, everybody asked you about, your favorite comedian, George Carlin. If you want to tell these guys the story, they may not know it. If you want to get into that a bit.
Sure. Well, yeah, that was about almost 10 years ago. I think I did this. I had been working at the Daily Show for a little while, and I live on basically like the Upper West Side, Morningside Heights, which is George Carlin's old neighborhood. And I had read in his autobiography, his memoir, he wrote a whole chapter about the neighborhood where I live, and he named not only the street that he grew up on, but the address. And I just took a walk over there just to look around, why not? And I was struck that he had been dead for a few years at that point, that for a Carlin fan, that neighborhood and that area was kind of our Abbey Road. It was, if you dug especially his earlier albums from the 70s, Class Clown basically takes place right on that street and all that. And it just struck me as odd that that you would have no idea that he was ever there. There was no plaque on the building. There was the street sign. There was no street sign. The deli didn't even have a George Carlin goddamn bagel or sandwich, So I got it in my head that, well, he needs the street sign. They should name this street after him. And so I kind of took it upon myself to, just to not knowing what it would entail to spearhead an effort to get this street co-naming done. And now the reason I tell you that I was working at the Daily Show then was because I thought it could have been as simple as go in, ask Jon Stewart to put a call into the mayor. I mean, I thought it could have been as easy as that. Look, I know this guy who's connected and whatnot. So it wasn't that simple, but I learned the process and what it would take, and I was like, all right, let's do it. And it was at the same time, looking back again, where I was starting to look for things that were collaborative, that wasn't just me, and so I was able to work with a group of people, and we took it took twice as long as it should have. On average, these things take about 18 months. This took me 3 years.
Wow.
But we ended up getting the street sign hanging, and it hangs in Morningside Heights on West 121st Street. And there's only 2 of those signs. One hangs there, and the other one, let's see if you can see it, hangs right above my door.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's an official New York metal street sign. And who gave that to me as a thank you gift was our now Manhattan Borough president, and he was the representative of the district at the time, and Mark Levine, and he's a buddy of mine to this day. And
isn't Mark Levine the guy who did that green movement or something? Maybe I'm wrong. Might have been another guy. I'm sorry.
Green movement. He's been. I mean, he's been
something with ecology and the environment. Was he?
I wouldn't be surprised. He's a great guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just this past election was elected Manhattan Borough president. I'm totally excited for him.
Okay. Well, speaking of George Carlin, in our book, we do have a joke on that references him, so I'm going to do it. Why not plug myself again, right?
Mm-hmm.
October 11th, 1975, Saturday Night Live premieres on NBC with host George Carlin. Ruthless critics immediately say it used to be much better, like before it was even on. And there's Mike Morse's.
That's such a cool
the
drawing.
famous 3 doors.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's wind up with 2 things. Let's talk about your recurring role on a very famous show, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. You are Billy Jones on that show. It's a recurring role, right? You come back as the comedian Billy Jones. I saw one episode where she gets up on stage and then she rattles off your stuff and you're supposed to come on. You go, well, she just did my act or something like that.
Yeah, that was such a cool experience, and I'm so grateful that I was able to do that show. I got an opportunity to audition for them a couple of times. They first of all, they film in New York mostly. They're based here out of New York, and they liked to use comedians. There's a good number of comedians who popped up on the show in different fashion. And here's a bit of trivia. If you are a stand-up comedian on that show, they call you the real deal. That's their word for it. Like, you're a real comic, oh, you're a real deal. Okay. So I auditioned a couple of times over the course of the series, and got to a call backstage and didn't get it. And then this one came up. Yeah, and the first one was just this scene in the series where she had, if for those who follow the show, she had her career was at a low point. She had just gotten kicked off of this huge tour opening for Shy Baldwin, this musical act, and comes back to the city, and she's not able to get any work in the clubs or anything else. So they go to one of the clubs that night, and my character was the headliner for the night, Billy Jones, and there was a couple other comics. And so it was she and her manager, Susie, go in and then end up getting pissed because she can't get on and disrupting the show and heckling the other comics and messing around. And then when it came time for my character to go on, they locked me out of the building and then went on. And what I loved about that, and why I knew I was going to get it from the second I got the email, was first of all, how cool is it that the whole scene was the 2 of them there bitching, and they see me across the room, and then I get the back and forth of these 2 iconic characters just calling me a hack. That's what a hack. He's fucking hack. I can hack. And it's just cutting back and forth. And I'm envisioning it. I'm like, this is the coolest thing in the world to be called a hacker. I'm getting this. And I frankly, I think I just kind of looked the part of what they were looking for, which, I didn't have, my hair was much shorter. I didn't have a beard, and a hack comic. It's the role I was born to play. And then I honestly, I thought it was just gonna be a one-off, and it came. I mean, during the pandemic, it came. Right when it opened back up. So it was back in February of 2021, I guess, whatever it was. We'd been almost 11 months at that point, I guess, when I got that gig of sitting on my couch. So it was a nice little injection of cash, which was in short supply, and something to do. And then like I said, I thought it was just a one-off, and then they were good enough. As the next season, the final season came, got more calls and got to come back in and get a little bit more screen time in the next season coming up. So that was pretty cool.
So how much does your street recognizability go up when you're on a show like that, big show like that, in New York especially?
No, on the street, no, I don't get recognized at all. No. And it's funny, it's like when they bring me up on stage as a comic and they say a recurring role, like, it's pretty much the first thing I say to people is like, I don't recognize me from that show either, especially the way I look now. Yeah. Like, if you see me now and they said he was on Maisel, it's like, oh, did they, did Miss Maisel go to Altamont or something like that? But what is cool is when I get people will call or text or Facebook message me that they saw it and didn't realize it was me. You know what I mean? And I just popped up. They didn't know I was on the show or anything, so it was kind of a surprise for them. That was a cool thing to have happen. But no, it's far too small a role for anybody to
pick up on it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we usually end our show with a stand-up comedy tip of the week. So here we are. We're 4 comedians at various stages, levels, whatever. This week, I want to talk a little bit. Hopefully, you stay on, Kevin, for this, just a couple of minutes. I want to talk about open mics for a second. And my tip for open mics, we've all been to these hundreds of them, right? And even the biggest comedians, pop in at open mics once. You'd be surprised who shows up at these things, right? But my tip is never go on an open mic with notes in your hand that you refer to, and never do any crowd work. That's not the purpose of an open mic. And I see a lot of people violating that, in my opinion. I think it's time for you to just, even if you have 1 minute of material, I'd rather see you just go up and do your 1 minute and get off than refer to notes and stuff and do the other thing I mentioned. So what are your feelings on, how to conduct yourself at an open mic? And it's open to everybody.
Yeah, I think that's valid. Not to bring, you don't want to, I don't think you ever really want to bring notes on stage or whatnot, I mean, unless you're Janine Garofalo, that was kind of her shtick, was that act like, oh, I just jotted this down in the hotel today, came over, which is all bullshit, but it's stage prep. It's part of your act and your persona. That's cool. Because I don't think I'll put it this way. I think you should record yourself. Every set you should record, whether you listen back to it right away or in 10 years. You should record yourself so you can hear the progress of how a bit develops or whatnot. But there's a reason I would say not to bring paper on stage. There's a chunk in my act that I've been doing for a while now about something that happened in my real life, which was when my niece was born. My parents chose these dumb names to be called, but their grandparent names. And I noticed all their friends were becoming grandparents at the same time. And these otherwise really normal human beings were really picking really dumb sounding sounds and then calling them, my mom, my mom's friends are all of a sudden calling her, it's like, oh, this isn't our friend Dan. We call him Opa now and shit like that. It annoyed me. It annoyed the shit out of me. And I would bitch because my parents are Nana and Nono, and it's different by one letter. And I'm like, it's confusing. It's stupid. My grandmother, who was Nana, thought that was too close to my mother's name now. So she turned it into Gigi and all this shit. I'm like, your name's Yvonne. It's all this. And so I would bitch about it and all this kind of stuff again and again and again until it dawned on me, oh, hey, stupid, this is something that you're passionate about for some reason. It should be in your act. So I was performing at some club, I don't remember where, but that day I sat down at my computer and I just vomited everything that annoyed me about it. And I printed it out and I intended to bring the paper on stage so I would have a reference. Then I forgot the paper. So then I had to go on stage and just start doing that material without a net, without a paper or anything else. And what I found was that I was naturally remembering the funnier stuff, and the filler I'd self-edited from probably 3 pages of typed up computer ramblings and rantings of a madman. And I'd probably gotten myself a bit that was at the time like 4 minutes long. Like I'd gotten rid of a lot of the fat. So just bringing the paper on, I think all you're doing is you're limiting yourself. And if it's funny and if it's material that you care about or is personal to you, you should be able to get those words out in some fashion. And it's not the same bit that I would do today.
Yeah.
It's come a long way, and it changes in the process. So that would be my anecdote of why I would say, yeah, you don't want to bring your paper on stage, just unless you're going into like, you're Chris Rock or something going into stand-up New York because you're going to be hosting the Oscars or some shit, and you've got to check the wording on these jokes. Yeah. That's a whole different story. But just in your regular life, and the other thing I would say about open mics is to realize that that's probably one of the hardest audiences you're ever going to have to play for. Comics are jaded, or not even jaded yet, but they're self-involved. They're not going to listen. They're going to be judging your joke based on, is this person funny? Is this joke good? Well, how would I have done that joke better? Blah, blah, blah. They're not going to feed into that. But what is important when you're young is to keep doing it. And if you can actually get a legitimate laugh in an open mic, you're on the right track. And then what you'll find is when you end up in front of a real audience, those jokes are going to work because the open mic is pretty much like swinging a baseball bat with the donut on it. All of a sudden you're swinging the bat and it weighs, 24 ounces less, and it whips right across.
Okay. Jason, you were going to say something?
Yeah, if I could add one thing to that, and it has nothing to do with the comedy itself, nothing to do with it. It would be hang out afterwards, socialize afterwards.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I know. Yeah, we treat each other so terribly. I mean, like Kevin just said, and you guys know it. You're playing to nobody when you do an open mic. Everybody's looking at their phone, and nobody respects anybody. I really try to give the respect and listen to the guy on stage.
Right. Well, it's not just it's respect to your peers. Look, the people who do well are going to end up gravitating towards the other people who do well, and then you continue to do well together. What I would say is when I first started doing open mics, I would take the train into Manhattan from Long Island, 45-minute ride. And at first, I'd maybe have one good joke and 5 terrible jokes. Then I'd drop the terrible jokes or make the terrible jokes better. And you keep doing that. And eventually I had 5 great jokes. And each one, this is after, I don't know how many times, maybe a dozen or 2 times. And all the jokes did well. I get off stage and I have people coming up to me who at this point now have done the White House Correspondents' Dinner, have done television a million times, podcasts that are hit, on iTunes, 500 million subscribers on YouTube. And they were like, that was so great. Oh my gosh, these are, and then I was shy because I was super young and I was super new and I was really shy. So I would just say my thank yous and then I'd beeline out the door. But if I had hung around with those people and you know what I'm saying? Maybe things would be different, But so my point is, what you do off stage is just as important in a lot of cases as what you do on stage.
No, it's all networking. Well, to prove it, I have pictures of you and I outside of comedy shows, after shows.
Yeah.
So you've taken your own advice.
Oh no, of course. But yeah, obviously, over time. But I'm saying from the get-go, because hindsight is 2020.
Right.
And things are going well now, and but I'm a lot more strategic now and a lot more, I think, disciplined and focused and a million other things. But I would say, once again, hindsight is 2020. When I look back, you should always hang out. So that's why this advice is for new people. So new people don't make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and that's a good advice, and that's good. I think Jason also, like myself, started young, and that's one of the advantages of starting young. I mean, when I was barely 21 by the time I moved to Manhattan, to start comedy. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't married. I didn't have kids, which I don't have kids now. But, the point is I didn't have responsibilities in life that I needed to get back home to. And so comedy in the comedy world was my social scene. It's, and you would hang out and do that kind of stuff. And then you do, you do meet other people and you get to, find out about other gigs in advance and things like that. Now, but that's the thing now, like I'm 43 and I'm older and I'm jaded. And the one of the nice things about being a warm-up comic is anytime I go to a show, you know, that's not like a strict, you know, club show with a strict lineup, I can basically go in and just offer to go up first because they figure I'll get the audience going for them, and then I can get the hell out of there, which I love. You know?
Yeah.
All right, I think we're
Sort
going
of
to
a 180. It's a 180.
right?
You
Yeah.
do the
Totally.
socializing in the beginning so that later on you could just go on and bounce like Chris Rock at the
No,
stand-up New York.
1,000%. And now I'm back. I'm it's 360 because now I'm back to the other thing. Now I'm trying to make myself go like at least once a week and just go hang out at the bar at Stand Up New York, even if I'm not booked, just hang out. Just you know, that's what I always would tell, like, you know, when I was young, I would go hang out at a bar anyways. If I had a night off, I'd go drink at a bar. Well, if you're going to do that, go hang out at a comedy club bar. If they know you're a comic, they're not going to charge you $12 a beer like the schmucks in the room. You know, they're not, it's not free, but might as well use your socializing time to try. You can, you know, you can totally meet girls at comedy clubs just like you can at other bars, and you can meet people who can help you. I think that's a big thing. So yeah, I'm doing that and trying to get back out and do more of it because I frankly feel like I took my eye off the ball for a while, and now I'm, you know, that whole lattice work, I'm coming back to want to get the stand up back up to a level, not artistic level. I'm happy with where it is that way, but to a financial level, getting more work and better work.
And I think it's in all of our DNA just to be around comedy clubs. It's where we feel comfortable, you know. It's like Leno's back doing that. He's always at Flappers in LA, and Seinfeld's always popping up at Gotham, and it's just in our blood to it's just a level of comfortability that we feel, I think, just to be in that environment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, I want to give you a couple of plugs. Kevin, you're going to be at Catch in Princeton, right? February 24th and 25th, headlining there.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have your workshop. It's a hosting workshop, right? To teach comedians about actual hosting.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's especially since this is a podcast, I'm guessing, that's aimed towards comedians and aspiring comedians. Yeah, I mentioned it kind of earlier of how I took the skills I acquired from hosting and realized that they transferred to audience warm-up. And so this came out of the pandemic again. You know, I had a lot of time to reassess my career, to look at what worked, what didn't work. And that's when I was able to really understand, oh, it was all that hosting and those things and how it became and fed right into the warm-up. And then no sooner did I start getting back to the clubs here in the city and popping around, and I was seeing the hosts, you know, these young comics who I hadn't heard of are going up and hosting. And I was fortunate that I started, you know, at a point where I was still able to learn from the people who were from the heyday, you know, the bookers who were booking and running the rooms back in the 80s and stuff like that. And that there used to be this principle, you put the strongest comic to host, and this is the way you do it, and that kind of stuff. So I learned all those skills, and then I combined those with my UCB training and improv skills. And I started getting into these clubs and seeing these young comics hosting, and I went up first, you know, as I'm known to do. And so I was at the mercy of the host. And this guy did 10 minutes of what he called crowd work, which was literally, it was a small room to begin with. He just went table to table, person to person. What's your name? Where are you from? And then moved on to the next. It was not, there was no joke. There was nothing. He built nothing off of it. It's what it was like I was standing and just listening in at Ellis Island or something. I'm like, this isn't comedy. You're taking the census, you know? And I started to see that, like, nobody was telling these young guys, no, there's a way of hosting and there's a way of doing it and setting up. And I fucking bombed that night because I was the first one up, and this guy had dug such a hole that I had to work just to get out of the hole, and it was a waste of my time. And so I started, that's where I realized, oh, there may be a market for actually somebody to sit down and spend like 3 hours, which is what I do. I have a seminar where, we spend 2 or 3 hours, and I take my class step by step through, look, this is how you host a show. This is how you hold a mic. This is how you bend your goddamn knees so you feel centered. This is how you do crowd work. This is what yes and means. Don't ask a question if you're not ready. All that kind of shit. And then the other part of it is, and these are the ways that I took that and I created a career in warm up. And here's how I contacted the shows, and here's how I got booked on the shows, and here's all that kind of shit. Secrets of audience warm up that if I was still doing it, I would never give away, because I wouldn't want the competition. You know what I mean? I'm doing it out of West Side Comedy Club. Our next one is coming up on March 25th. And then the other thing is I'm taking it on the road with me too. So I'll go, ideally be going to play a club down in Arlington, Virginia, or a room in Arlington, and then doing the next morning or something, doing a one for that area and stuff. It's just starting off, and it's a cool thing. It's, again, that whole lattice work that I talk about, and the idea of, this is one other tip for aspiring comics or whatnot, is vision your career or everything is like a 5-gallon bucket with a bunch of hoses that drip into it. Yeah. And at the end of the month, you've got to be able to scoop out of that bucket to pay your rent and your phone and everything else. Well, the more hoses you have that can at least drip something, the better off you are. You're never going to have every hose is not going to gush at the same time, and hopefully they don't all go dry at the same time. You know what I mean? So for me now, going out and teaching is just another hose. All of a sudden, Neil, I'm 43 years old. I'm becoming an elder statesman here. Like, I'm teaching, but I got 20 years in this business, and I've learned. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing to start to accept that. Yeah, you're older and you know what you're doing, and people actually want to pay to hear it. It's very gratifying.
Look, who better than you to teach? You're successful. You're articulate. You know how to get the message across. Why not? Hey.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to do it. And if people are interested, they can just go to kevinbartini.com, and there's links there and stuff. And I do, I've done private coaching, and I did some online joke writing classes and stuff during the pandemic. That's where I kind of learned that even people would be interested in what I have to say, and it's been pretty cool. So I hope people can come check it out.
Absolutely. Well, listen, it's been a great episode, and the way I know it is that the time went over and I didn't even really think about it or realize it. So thanks so much, Kevin. Thanks, Jason.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks, Joseph. It's been awesome. We'll put links for all your stuff, Kevin, on our pages and stuff. And
yes.
See you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Hey guys,
Thank
happy
you,
to do it
guys.
anytime. Thank you so much.